Back in 2014, December of last year, NI Screen announced it would be making up to 50% budget cuts to some of Northern Ireland's most famous film organisations and centres. One of those organisations affected was Queen's Film Theatre, back right here. So what effect will this have on one of Northern Ireland's most famous cinema houses?
The QFT was established in 1968 and has become the go-to place for film goers who want to catch the latest films from all over the world, or they can enjoy the classics from decades before. But what exactly does this mean for the future of QFT? We spoke to the head of the organisation, Susan Pickin, for more information on the matter.
Hi Suzanne, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Now we've all heard about the recent budget cuts that have been affecting film groups all over Northern Ireland, specifically Queen's Film Theatre right here. What effect will this have on the QFT?
Well, it was a very difficult time towards the end of last year for us. We were told that we were facing potential cuts of 50 to 60% of our core funding, which if they'd come through at that level, I think that basically we wouldn't be able to stay open.
Oh really?
Yeah, you get to a certain point and once the funding cuts in, and we don't get that much, but it would just be enough to make things really, really difficult. We then, as a response, and this wouldn't just have affected QFT, a lot of other organisations, Cinemagic, Belfast Film Festival, all would have been in a really similar position. So we started a lot of campaigning just before Christmas, the Save NI Film, hashtag Save NI Film campaign, and I think that really seemed to work, and certainly people really got people's
I signed it
attention.
myself, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, there was a really great response to it, that we're really grateful to everybody for kind of coming on board with it. But we're now looking at much less cuts. We're still waiting for them to be confirmed.
Okay.
But the impact is a lot less severe, and while it's not easy, and it is going to be tight, and it's going to be things that we want to do that we're just not going to be able to afford to do, it's certainly a lot better than what we were facing.
Okay, so it hasn't been like the full 50% cuts? Not yet?
Well,
Okay.
not unless, I mean, it's a difficult situation because, as you know, the overall political situation, the budget still isn't signed off. So anything could happen, but at this particular point in time, we're looking at substantially less than 50%, which is fantastic.
Okay, well, that's brilliant. So have there been, so even with these substantially less budget cuts, have there been many compromises to the actual cinema house, or is it still being remained pretty steady, or how's it been?
I mean, we've been really lucky because I think just because we've really have been lucky with the films that have been on it, because we've done really great films the last couple of years, and we've been very sort of careful in how we sort of choose films and how we program what we program. And we've also, been really building up our relationship with our audiences. So I think they trust what we put on. They may not be so aware of the films; they're smaller films, but they trust our judgment. So in some ways, we've been quite lucky that we've been able to, offset the difference by selling quite a lot of tickets. I mean, this year we're on track for having 100,000 people over the course of the year, which is great. But that said, it still is really tight, and there are things that marketing, we've had to put our marketing way back, we don't do advertising anymore. You can see the chairs in here. If I could find £25,000 down the back of the sofa to replace the broken chairs.
I don't know, they're pretty comfy.
No, they're comfy, but they're kind of definitely past their best. And or if the projector breaks, they're really expensive. For a digital projector, you're talking £60,000, £70,000.
Wow, really?
So if something goes, it is kind of scary when you start thinking about it.
Okay, yeah. You recently you teamed up with the Arts Council to do a campaign as such to promote the QFT running. It's where you charge people 13p to see Good Vibrations, and I think the idea was this is how much it would cost per person, per week. Was it to keep the QFT running?
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't just for QFT. It was actually for all of the arts organisations across Northern Ireland. Everybody that's funded by the Arts Council. We all work really closely together. They're facing a really difficult time as well, so we wanted to show support for them, and we thought, great opportunity to promote, how much 13p can get you in some ways in a great film, a good vibrations. That, if you think of the story of Terry Hooley and just the creativity and the energy, I mean, you wouldn't really have all that without all the different arts organisations, and people need inspiration to make things happen. So the whole point really was that 13p, to have a vibrant, thriving arts sector is hardly anything, and it's a very small amount of money really to keep everything going. I mean, I don't know ultimately how successful the campaign was, but we felt it was really important for us that we wanted to support
even just to put out the message there.
And certainly when you compare Northern Ireland to other parts of the UK, I mean Scotland in particular, we get far, far, far less spent on film and culture than the rest of the UK. We really are
because it's still quite a small sort of industry, isn't it, in Northern Ireland? Even though you do hear about it growing, so we do on the news about big TV and film Hollywood productions coming on, but then you hear news about like film groups like Cinemagic, QFT getting a budget cuts. It is still like a small industry. It still gives you that there kind of reminder. So
it is small, but the phrase that people always say is punching above our weight, and we do, because if you think about it, we had 2 BAFTA nominated short films, an Oscar nominated short film. There's a short, the film The Survivalist, directed by Stephen Kindleton, which is in Tribeca Film Festival in a couple of weeks. We really do have, if you compare to what, apart from London, other regions in the UK, we've got a really, really strong film and television industry here, and the back end of that is to get people into that. You need to inspire them, you need to give people an opportunity to see films and to learn films and get engaged with culture and with writing and with plays and with acting and reading and art and everything that it takes to actually stimulate creativity and then stimulate industry. It's part of an ecosystem, it all sits together.
I think that's everything for this, Suzanne. So thank you very much for joining us today, and thanks for answering our questions. It's always good to get some insight on this here. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you. Queen's recently created an online campaign for people to sign a petition and save Queen's Film Theatre and keep it open to the public.
The final outcome of this petition is unknown. However, there is a huge response, but QFT are still fighting to keep its cinema house open.
The QFT is of great importance to Northern Ireland, not just in terms of cinema or Belfast, but to the whole cultural impact it has in Northern Ireland.
Places like these encourage people to visit the cinema more often to support their local community.
The skies get rough, I'm giving you all my love, I'm still looking up.
The QFT is of great importance to Northern Ireland, not just in terms of cinema or Belfast, but to the whole cultural impact it has in Northern Ireland.
Places like these encourage people to visit the cinema more often to support their local community.